Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Administrator, as you know, I'm deeply troubled by the NASA budget, in which science is cut overall by $162 million and planetary science by an astounding $300 million, resulting in the administration's short-sighted proposal to walk away from the ExoMars program with ESA that would have put an orbiter around Mars in 2016 and a lander on the surface 2 years later to begin the process of catching samples for a later return to Earth. I don't need to tell you that a Mars sample return is the top of the scientists' list and that the 2018 mission is ranked at the top of the current planetary decadal. And I also don't need to remind you that the number 2 mission is a Europa orbiter that will give us insight into one of the solar system's most mysterious bodies. And if there was any question about the priorities of this committee, as the language Mr. Culberson proposed last year makes clear, those planetary decadal priorities are our priorities as well. No element of the American space program has generated more public excitement and interest over the past decade than our robotic exploration of the red planet. In the days following Spirit's landing in January of 2004, NASA web servers crashed under an assault from literally millions of people worldwide who wanted to see the latest pictures from the Martian surface. These proposed cuts not only threaten the most successful exploration program in NASA history, they also imperil what is certainly the world's most specialized workforce, the engineers and scientists at JPL who specialize in entry, descent, and landing on other planets. I don't need to tell you how difficult it is to do this kind of work. There have been more failures than successes at landing vehicles on Mars, and ours is the only country to have yet succeeded. But this is a workforce and a capability that cannot survive long periods of inactivity. If we adopt your reconfigured Mars program, a drastic scaling back of our capacity to do this kind of edge-of-the-envelope science will be the inevitable consequence. I think cannibalizing the Mars program, which gets closer to unlocking the secrets of Mars' past with each mission and discovery, is a major step backwards for NASA and the nation. While human spaceflight has been stuck in low Earth orbit for 3 decades and now is reliant on the Russians, and with James Webb still years away from launch, the Mars program is the key driver of public support for the space program. In short, I think the budget proposal is a disaster for our leadership in space. And I want to thank the Chairman sincerely for calling a timeout to give us a chance to fully explore this proposal and I hope come up with something much better. I am perplexed at the responses that you gave to the Chairman's questions at the outset of this hearing when he asked you why the disproportionate and devastating cuts to planetary science and in particular the Mars program. And your response was, I quote, "The Mars program was in the best shape." I don't understand that answer. That's an answer that says in order to make budget cuts, we savage the most successful program we have. I don't think you can come here and tout MSL because MSL, this committee is about the future. It's about what we are going to do in the future. And to rely on MSL is to rely on our past. That was a program that was developed largely under the Bush administration. And for this administration at NASA to say that this is proof of our ongoing commitment to Mars just falls desperately short to me. Because if you were before this committee while MSL was still on the drawing board, you'd be coming before us to tell us to pull the plug on MSL. And I think that is just a tragic place to be. We now have a decadal survey top priority that will not be undertaken if your proposal is accepted, will not be taken by the United States. It will be taken by the Europeans now in partnership with the Russians. And I think it is a sad state of affairs when we're already reliant on the Russians to get a lift to the space station. We're also going to tell the Europeans they can't count on us anymore. They need to count on the Russians for the top priority of our own scientists. I also don't understand the response you gave to the Chairman about the decadal when he asked you, isn't this inconsistent with the decadal priorities? And your answer was something to the effect of, no, canceling the ExoMars missions, canceling the top priority of the decadal, which is to catch those samples this decade, is somehow advancing the decadal priorities. That is a very Orwellian answer in my view that says that the way to go forward is to go backward. The way to go up is to go down. And just by saying so doesn't make it so. If we walk away from the decadal, we are walking away from the decadal. And no amount of spin or rhetoric can change that fact. What I would like to try to understand is, when you came before our committee last year, when you met individually with members of this committee, and you said that we could do a flagship mission to Mars, that we had the budget to do a flagship mission to Mars, and we agreed with you on doing a flagship, even though it meant condensing some of what had been planned. When did you make the decision during the last 12 months that that was no longer the case? Was that a decision you made, or was that a decision OMB made? And if it was a decision that OMB made, why is OMB deciding what the planetary decadal priorities ought to be? I understand they can give you a top line, but the thing I don't understand is the top line for the NASA budget is essentially flat from the year before. And I don't think you or we on this committee expect it to be any different. None of us thought that the NASA budget would be dramatically improved. So there's no surprise in going from last year to this year in terms of what the top line is. And what I would like to know is, did this proposal to abandon the flagship missions, did that come from you, or was that proposed by OMB?
Congressman, the decision came from me.
Well, the decision, I'm not asking where the decision
You asked me where the decision came from. I told you it came from me. I'm asking you
where the proposal came from. Because
the decision came from me.
I understand the decision came from you. Where did the proposal come from? Did you propose this, or did OMB propose this?
I asked the question because I spend time with my counterpart in the European Space Agency, Mr. Jean-Jacques Dordain, who has the responsibility for managing the 19 nations that are a part of ESA. And as we talked from 2009, when I signed my first letter of intent with him to continue to talk about the ExoMars mission. And I think if you look at documentation, if you talk to him, we never committed to the ExoMars mission. We always had difficulty trying to determine that we would have the funds.
Which is, did the proposal come from you, or did it come from OMB?
The question that led to my decision came from me. I asked, how are we going to do how are we going to do a Mars sample return based on the budget that we have currently? And this was not this budget. This was the budget in place for 2012, even the budget for 2011. What is the level of detail in the 2018 mission? And at that time, when I was told, well, we are developing the 2018 mission with ESA, I said, well, okay, what about the sample return? Well, that will come on subsequent missions. That is not something that I was...
Administrator, the sample return was always going to come on subsequent missions.
Yeah, but that's not the impression that people had.
No one was ever proposing that we were going to go and catch the samples and bring them back on the same mission. That was always the proposal.
Well, the only person who didn't understand that was me.
My question, Mr. Administrator, I still haven't got an answer to, which is, where did the proposal to cancel the flagship missions come from? Did that come from you, or did it come from OMB?
The proposal came from coordinated efforts between my science experts, the people in NASA, our talks with the White House, with OMB and OSTP, and our talks with our international partners.
And when did this happen?
This happened over the last 12 months. It started happening actually as early as 2009 when I signed the letter of intent.
Then when you came in here last year and you told us we had the resources to do the flagship
At the time,
mission,
I thought we had the resources to do that because the budget was $2 billion higher than it is right now.
But now you're telling me back in 2009 you decided you didn't have the resources?
I did not decide I didn't have the resources, and I began to question whether we had the resources then because, as I said, you and others fully understood that ExoMars was not a sample return. I was not that smart. I thought ExoMars was a sample return because that's what the decadal survey said.
You understood from us last year that our priority was to do the top of the decadal survey.
Yes, sir.
And as the NASA budget hasn't changed, I can only conclude that that you and OMB and the White House had already made the decision you were going to cancel the flagship mission and just didn't want to tell us.
Yes, sir.
Or, apropos of the Chairman's question about why you want to remove the language limiting the cost overruns on Webb, that it's now your view that those costs are going to continue to increase, and therefore you need to come in and cannibalize the successful Mars program.
Yeah.
Because something changed over the last 12 months.
A number of things changed over the last 12 months, and my growth into this job and my understanding of the complexity of the missions we were doing and our ability to mount a sample return mission changed. My understanding of that changed.
So
and I could not...
It's not a change in Webb from last year.
Yes, it is.
Make sure that
There is a change in Webb from last year. Last year, Webb was gone. And I felt that the James Webb Space Telescope was so critical to this nation and the international science community that we could not make that short-sighted decision. And so I fought to get funding for the James Webb Space Telescope. As I told the chairman, what I would have liked to have done was asked for enough money to launch James Webb in 2014. That would have been irresponsible because that would have decimated the science budget.
When you came,
we have a
when you
program
came
right
to this,
now.
When you came to this committee to argue for Webb,
Yes, sir.
and the chairman raised the concern about Webb,
Yes.
you didn't tell the chairman or any of us that you want to do Webb, but by the way, we're not going to be able to do Mars if we do this.
I didn't know that at the time.
And when did you have this epiphany that
Congressman,
you couldn't afford Mars anymore?
this epiphany, it wasn't an epiphany. It was a successive understanding of our posture fiscally and a successive understanding on my part of our technical capability that told me that I could not, and as I told Jean-Jacques Dadin, I cannot in good conscience allow them to continue to think that the United States is going to be there for them on a sample return mission in 2028 that we cannot support, we cannot afford.
Right.
And so I said, we need to step back, and as I told them, most of this happened before Christmas, because we had people in Paris, France, in negotiations with Roscosmos and the European Space Agency, and I finally decided, I called Jean-Jacques and I said, I can't in good conscience allow our folk to continue to sit there discussing something that we know we will not be able to support. And so, if we want to be able to launch in the 2018-2020 window, and that's what Dr. John Grunsfeld is trying to do now, to find a series of missions that are decreased in scope, but accomplish the basic objectives of setting up a subsequent Mars sample return mission. And I think we will do that.
And Mr. Administrator, I can't in good conscience support a budget that says that America's days of leadership in space science are limited, that Europe, you can't count on us, that China is ascendant in its Mars program, that you got to go to Russia and later China, that we're going to walk away from our own decadal priority, our own top priority of our science community, that when we're this tantalizingly close to finding the building blocks of life on another planet, that we're going to walk away, and that we're going to rest on the laurels of the administrations and the generations that went before. I can't in good conscience support that kind of proposal. And I yield back.
Congressman, as I mentioned to you once before, I would hope that you would not put MSL in the past when you communicate with people at the Jet Propulsion Labs. We have the hardest part of that mission coming, and for them to believe that their representative feels that that's something in the past, the most difficult part of that mission.
I don't think the mission is in the past, and no one has greater respect for the work that those brilliant people are doing than I do. But what I resent is coming in here and using MSL as a justification to cancel the future of the Mars program and the flagship missions. And I can tell you, Mr. Administrator, there is no one at JPL working on MSL or any other program that will accept the argument that because they are working so hard and had such great success with MSL thus far, that we should cancel our future flagships.
And Congressman, we have not given up on flagships. We have not given up on future flagships. What I have Dr. Grunsfeld doing is trying to come up with a plan that will allow us to strategically approach the next flagship mission to Mars that will enable us to do a sample return mission. That is still a primary objective of our Mars exploration program. We're trying to accomplish the science objectives of the joint ESA-NASA collaboration that was going on ExoMars, and we intend to facilitate their success to the greatest amount we can. To also accomplish the priorities of the planetary decadal, which said a Mars sample return mission is our #1 objective. They did not say ExoMars. They said ExoMars is an example of a mission that will facilitate that success. There are more ways to do that than participating in ExoMars. We will cooperate with the Europeans and maybe the Russians, but it will be an international effort that brings us a sample return mission, and it will happen in the foreseeable future. We are not giving up on Mars. We are not decimating the Mars program. We have what I think is a very ambitious Mars program. We have not given up on Europa. we have 3 studies underway right now just looking at how we can attack the planet Europa, the moon. And we have got to figure out how we prioritize our science budget so that we can accomplish as many of those goals as possible. We can't do them all. We cannot do them all. So we are trying to prioritize such that we will achieve the objectives.
The last
that
thing
are
I'm
set out.
going to say, and I appreciate the indulgence of the chairman because I know I've taken more than my time. Those are all fine words, but they don't make it so. And defunding Europa doesn't mean that you are pushing forward with Europa. Canceling the flagships doesn't mean you're pushing forward with an aggressive Mars program. It's exactly the opposite. I wish that we could all get by on good words, but what matters is the deeds, and the deeds right now are canceling the flagship missions, they're canceling Europa, they're ceding to Russia the role of, with ESA, meeting the #1 priority of our scientists and the decadal survey. And that is a very sad proposal and one that I can't accept, and I yield back.
Yes, and Congressman, I promise we will discuss the status of the Mars program after we land on Mars in August, and I think you will see the interest in Mars explode. So I think we don't have the program in place that I would like to have because I don't have endless money, but we have a program in place that I think will bring great results. And we have not given up our leadership on exploration of Mars, whether human or robotic. So I think we respectfully disagree on the status of the program right now, but I think we have the same objective in mind, and we'll get there.
Mr. Yoder?